So hey there everyone, LoneWolf360 here back again for another video. So, not so long ago, me and my little brother had the chance to go sit in theaters for what felt like the first time in forever to go watch the Mario movie. And well, what are my thoughts on it? Well, it certainly was a movie. I wouldn't say that it's like revolutionary or anything, but I would have to say that it's an enjoyable experience if I were going to compare it to another video game adaptation which kind of came out as of recently. It's better than Sonic 1, I'll give it that, but at the same time, I gotta have a few other thoughts about it. So of course, let us get into the video. So when it comes to the animation and the voice acting of this film, I have to say, for the most part, the animation of this film is just fucking beautiful. Like, there's never a time to where you can look at this film and say that it's not eye candy, because it's just so consistently bright and colorful. It feels like something that was directly just ripped out of the games. Especially when it comes to the amount of references which they managed to shove in there, which in a way kind of puts the Sonic movies to shame. Because I'm gonna be real here, I love the Sonic movies and all, but at the same time, holy shit, man, just with the amount of stuff I was able to spot in the background, rather if it was just like a little visual reference of stuff like mentioning the first Mario game, or just a certain level, or even things like background characters and even the music, it was honestly pretty insane to see. Well, that and also the characters and a few other things were also pretty well animated. And I like how they also did some things like pull off a few neat tricks when it came to the effects, like, I don't know, when it came to the power blocks and all. But now that we're done talking about that, how about we move on into the voice acting? So I feel like when it came to the internet talking about this film, there were two very different two very different subsections of people. There were people that were fine with it, and people that absolutely despise it. And I kind of fit into that centrist role where I was like, you know what, it's not really gonna affect my experience, and I just kind of feel like my opinion just more or less remains the same. Sure, it was a bit odd listening to Chris Pratt's voice when it came to the trailers and everything, but by the time that I got to the movie, it was pretty fine. Not only that, but when it came to all the other voice actors, they just kind of naturally fit in the role, especially with characters like Bowser and Jack Black. That guy, he really blew it out of the fucking park. But now that we're done talking about that, how about we move on into the things like the writing and pacing? So when it comes to the writing in this film, as I predicted, it wasn't really anything special because, as I said before, when it comes to Illumination, well sure, they can make some visually impressive looking films. At the same time, when it comes to the writing, it really wasn't anything special. Though if I were going to say one thing, I have to say, I loved Mario and Luigi's dynamic in this film. Like, the chemistry between Chris Pratt and Charlie Day was honestly something else, and by the time that we got to the one scene where we get to see them get separated by going to the Mushroom Kingdom was the moment that I was just filled with dread. Because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to connect the dots and find out that Luigi was gonna be trapped in a dungeon for like a good majority of the movie. So a part of me is just like, well sure, their dynamic is great and I wanted to see more of that. At the same time, my boy Luigi's just kind of shafted to the side for like a good majority of the story when they could have been cooking. But outside of that, there also is the pacing. Now, if there's one thing which has been very noticeable in any of the trailers which have been dropping in the past few months / weeks, it has to be the way about how they all kind of spoil major events. So for example, Luigi and Mario getting separated as they're sucked into the Mushroom Kingdom, or the Rainbow Road scene, or that fight with Donkey Kong, or just all these other events. Well sure, they are cool to see when you actually get to see the context leading up to them. At the same time, you get to realize that, wow, the trailers really spoiled all the really cool moments of this film outside of like the very beginning intro segment with like Mario and Luigi like in Brooklyn, and then like the very ending where you get to see you know who kick whose ass. It's like, come on man, it just kind of ruins the pacing. But on the subject of pacing, as I was saying earlier, I kind of feel like this film could have been a bit better if it had some filler moments in between, so it didn't feel like it was just rapidly going from one location to the other. But now that we're done talking about that, how about we move on once again? So, if there's been one thing that has been mighty controversial surrounding the Mario movie, outside of those weird people that claim that it's woke, it has to be the critic reviews. Because on one hand, it's like, okay, it's completely fine if you, like, never associated with Mario in the past few years and you're just kind of out of the loop. But at the same time, I feel like half of these reviews are just feeling very disingenuous. Rather, if it comes to people saying that the film was inaccessible to non-fans, when that is clearly a lie. Because as I mentioned earlier, while there are a lot of references in this film, the references are just purely visual things that are rather in the background and don't really have all that much of an important connection to the overarching plot. Because sure, well, you'll notice some things like the original Mario game, or some things that you might recognize from the games, or even other characters. At the same time, it's not like it's something that has so much of a connection to the plot to where if you don't know this thing, it's just gonna be completely hard for you to understand. Like, for example, the power blocks. These things have been explained in the movie in a pretty fine way to where pretty much anyone can get the basic gist behind them. And then there's some other people complaining that the film is bad because its main demographic is kids, and that's, oh, what is that? The writing isn't deep. And I'm just gonna be real here, guys. If you go into something like the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and expect something along the lines of it being deep and complex and not centered towards kids, especially when Illumination and Nintendo are working on it, when their entire thing is trying to center towards kids and nostalgia, I'm sorry, but you're kind of lost, man. It's just a lost cause. Like, sure, this movie ain't perfect or anything, but at the same time, trying to bash it because it isn't like the Citizen Kane of video game adaptations is just dumb, because a lot of these arguments and quote-unquote criticisms don't feel like actual criticisms. They're just nitpicks from people that are out of touch. But that's all I really have to say about the Mario movie, you know? Definitely not a perfect experience, but it's fun, and I like about what it did. And I'm just saying, Sonic, you know what? I love ya. Like, Sonic 2 was a banger, but at the same time, you guys better sneak in some references with the music and shit, because, man, I'm just saying, Mario cooked when it came to this one, and you don't want them to go cook again where they overthrow the throne. But, jokes aside, hope y'all all enjoyed the video. See y'all in another video, and enjoy the outro, folks. Later.